my glasses. Okay, what we're doing here tonight. We are going to hear from some guest speakers because many of the youth that are referred to Campus Connection come from the school district, probation, DHS, and so the more that you know about those agencies, the more that you'll feel part of a larger network. So you're going to hear from Jenny Ellison from the District Attorney's Office, who's terrific. You're going to hear from Dixie and Erica from the Probation Office. You're going to hear from B. Lewis, who is a school social worker for PHS, Hooter High School. And so these are going to be really helpful as you think about the youth you're working with. Were they referred by probation? Did they come from the school district, maybe from a counselor or a resource officer? Did they come from the court system? And we don't want to think that just because their referral says something, we know something about them. We don't want to single story them, right? But we also want to know something about what it's like to navigate that system so we can be more helpful with them. We are also going to learn some clinical stuff tonight, and I'm going to do that. So I'm going to teach you some clinical skills and how to redirect behaviors in a way that holds on to the relationship between mentee and mentor and other relationships. What we believe strongly in Campus Connection is that all of that work, all of that relationship building, all of that stuff has to start with talking about diversity so we can really see and respect each other. And so my guess is that everyone in here has had medium to lots of training in this area. Maybe you are getting a women's studies certificate. Maybe you've taken some ethnic studies classes. Maybe race theory. Maybe this has been woven into your degree. For some of you, it might be a newer conversation. For most people, it's not a newer conversation, but the reason we do it is we want to have some common language around it and some common ideas and some common metaphors. So that's what we're here to do around that. So we're going to start with a cool slide. Oh, wow. Oh, down here too. I just saw everybody go like this. Like all of you had a really bad seat at the movie. That's like exactly what just happened. Okay. So one of the ways that we like to talk about things is the Big Eight. Now, when we say the Big Eight, it doesn't cover everything, but it covers some of the big social identities that make a difference in people's lived experiences, okay? So in general, those Big Eight are gender, race, class, sexual orientation, ethnicity, religion, age, and ability. Obviously, things like appearance, weightism, second language, lots of other things could be on here. Many of those other things kind of end up being a subcategory of some of these. So when we say the Big Eight, we're going to ask you to keep in mind your Big Eight. Where do you fall on the Big Eight? And where does your youth or youths that you're working with fall? And that'll just help us stay attentive to the differences and similarities in lived experiences. So for instance, let's just start at the top. Gender. Highly accepted. That seems funny, right? Like men are highly accepted, women are not. It just means that there is two ways in which highly accepted serves males. Institutionally and personally. Institutionally, every major institution, and I'm down here at the bottom now, institutional bias means all the major institutions, I keep seeing faces on you. I'll try not to. Hi, how's your mom? Right, I'll try not to do that along the way. Okay, so every major institution, healthcare, education, judicial, media, every major institution in our culture, in the US, has statistically, lots of research in this area, you could take a whole class on this, every single area has significant disparities based on these Big Eight, including men and women. You probably know even here at the university, there was just a women and gender equity study. We know that there are significant gender problems, and CSU doesn't look different. In fact, it looks better than some institutions across the country. But we know there are gender bias that are institutional and also personal, okay? So, same thing with race. Oh, so let me go up here. So, when you think about I'm gonna just use myself as example. I'm gonna map myself onto the big 8. Okay, so when it comes to the big 8, my gender is female. And so I do cross the line over to less accepted. I do, whether I know it or not, because sometimes you don't even know it. I do, obviously, when I walk in the world, have some less acceptance, personally, professionally, but boy, transgender would be less accepted. Okay, that's why once you cross the line, here I'll use this. Once you cross the line from accepted to unaccepted, or less accepted, you go on a continuum. So the line is important. The research says there's a difference between men and women, but the line gets bigger. Transgender is going to experience even more institutional and personal bias. What's personal bias? Expressing bias or experiencing bias on a personal level because of different social groups or identities. I'll give you an example. I was just at a training recently, and I brought up something about gender, and somebody who is a terrific scholar said to me, you're so sensitive. Now, if a man brought up something about being a male, probably he wouldn't be called that so sensitive. So there's personal little ways that become institutional. We want to pay attention to the way we treat the men and women, the youth that come in here to Campus Connection, and we want to pay attention to whether we're sitting there as transgender or male or female. We want to think about who they are in terms of gender and who we are in terms of gender, so that we can pay attention to the dynamics that might happen. So that's, so for me, I'm female, I'm over the line, but not as less accepted as men. Race. I'm white. I'm on that side. This other side tends to go from light skin to dark skin. What we know from tons of research, whether it's personal bias or institutional bias, meaning the court system, the education system, the darker skin you are, the more institutional and personal bias you have probably experienced in your life. And that doesn't mean for every single person, but it means statistically, over thousands of studies, we see this as being true. We want to pay attention to that. Class, middle class. And even though some people will say, yeah, but there's a lot of stereotypes about the wealthy, but the wealthy do not suffer institutional bias. In fact, they benefit from it. Banks love to loan them. And a really wealthy person probably isn't going to end up going to jail because they can afford attorneys. So even though there might be some personal bias about somebody who's really wealthy, it doesn't generally have institutional bias. And rarely even personal bias. For instance, what shows and magazines are we interested in? We're interested in the wealthy. I want to see what their car looks like. I want to see what their house looks like. We're interested in them. So once you cross the line, poor, and of course homeless, misspelled, I didn't catch that, sorry. So we tend to get even less interested and have more bias the less money people have. We even have some bias about how smart they might want to be, how they are, how generous they are, how interesting they are, right? Those biases come up. And I want to say something about bias, because I have bias and so do you. We all have bias. So we're only here to talk about bias management, not getting rid of it. Our brains have been way hijacked, and our brains participate in these bias interactions faster than we could ever engage our heart or our value system. So something will happen in our brain, and all we want to do in Campus Connection is say, whoa, I just noticed that, or I can't believe I just said that, and then clean that up. Sexual orientation, I'm straight, and I don't get judged for being straight. People don't ask me, when did I decide I'm straight? When did I come out as straight? Am I sure I'm straight? I don't get those kind of questions. Institutional or personal bias. But you do tend to get that over on GLBTQ side, and that can happen in lots of different ways on that continuum. Ethnicity. My ethnicity is I'm Euro-American. So my elders came from Germany. Most people don't find that, don't experience a bias with that. Now, if any of you have not done a DNA test, I always have to do a plug for this. So when you think about where did we all really come from, right? We all really came from Africa. So if you go onto the National Geographic site and you pay $100, which I know is a lot of money, it also makes great holiday gifts. I gave that to my family, and they weren't as excited about a spit tube for Christmas, but I was really excited. So that's what everybody got one year, but nonsense. So when you send in your spit to National Geographic, it'll tell you where you're from in Africa. And then you'll see your route and say, oh, I started here, but then my clan went this way, and that's why my skin adapted to this climate, and that's why my hair adapted to this climate. That's why I look like this now, and I passed through Germany, so that's the most recent that I can run through. Not a lot of bias for Euro-Americans. Not even a lot for Canadians. But boy, Iranian, right? You start to get down there. The more different from Euro-American, the more institutional and personal bias. So when you start to get more different, somebody says, I'm Nigerian. What would be another one? Mexican. Give me another. What'd you say? Arabian. Those bring up something different in our hijacked brains from how we've all been put into society, right? That's different than, I'm from Australia, I'm from New Zealand, I'm Canadian. There's difference. Religion. I say Christian or mainstream. Like if you look at me, you might think, well, there's nothing about her, except maybe these. I should have taken these off. But you don't know what these mean, but you might be wondering. When you're wondering about someone's religion, they're not mainstream. As soon as you wonder why you have that? Wonder why you wear your hair like that? I wonder why you have on that cross or that Jewish star, or I wonder about you. And so some religions are really mainstream. Even atheism isn't really mainstream. Some people might be atheists and think, ooh, not sure I want to come out like that, right? So the more mainstream you are, the more accepted. And then there's a continuum. And these are just examples, but probably a pretty rough religion to be right now would be Muslim. There's a lot of rhetoric, there's a lot of fear. I'm probably not going to get stopped at an airport for being Christian or passing, but I might if I'm Muslim. So there's a different institutional and personal bias based on that. Age, middle age. Middle age in general, that's a kind of a wide thing. There's not a lot of bias around middle age, but there really is around youth, the youth you're going to work with, and how many of you feel some bias just being your age? Somebody was saying to me that millenniums keep getting referred to negatively. Yeah, that's shit. Seriously, they haven't met you if they're doing that. So our youth, when my kids were teenagers and we'd go into a 7-Eleven to get a Slurpee, they'd have to put their backpacks down. Why? Because every teenager is a shoplifter? And elderly, we know that if somebody gets laid off and they try to get a job, no matter how good their skills, and they're 60 or 65, it's really rough because there's a lot of personal and institutional bias. And then there's ability. When you look at me, you might think, well, she seems to have all of cognitive and physical abilities from what I can tell. So I pass, right? But then there's low, so you might notice that somebody walks a certain way, talks a certain way, all the way down to really highly visible cognitive and physical abilities to the point where people won't make eye contact with you, they don't speak with you, and you get really invisible in our culture. So if I map myself, I'm female, white, middle class, straight, Euro-American, mainstream, middle age, I'm gonna run with that even though I have totally gray hair, and fully able. I get a lot of privilege, right? Is that your backpack? Can I use it? Sure. Good. God. How's yours? What's wrong with you people? Okay, can you sit that up? I'm going to use it. Okay, so here's the deal. I have a lot of privilege, right? Well, I didn't knock anybody over to get this, okay? I didn't fight anybody for it. I just showed up. And when I showed up, I had on, Peggy McIntosh has this great little article, if any of you have read this, called The Knapsack. So when I showed up, I just showed up with my privilege. I didn't show up middle class. That'd be weird. It's a tough crowd on a Friday night. Okay, so, but I showed up female. I showed up in the right body. My perception of myself and my body matched. I showed up white. My family was middle class. I showed up straight. I showed up Euro-American. I came from a mainstream family. I fully able and still am. It's amazing I can even carry all this privilege, right? I got so much privilege. But I didn't knock anybody over to get it. I just showed up. You know, if you're a white male and you're all the way on the highly accepted, you didn't probably run anybody over with a car to get that. You just showed up. But here's the deal. Just because we showed up with it doesn't mean it means we have to manage it, right? So one of the things that happens to me on the Max and also around campus is people whack me with their backpacks and they go, "Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there." We don't want to whack people with our privilege. And one of the problems with privilege is you can't see it. I'm really trying to be aware of my privilege, except I can't see it. It's really hard to be aware of your own privilege because it's not in front of you. So in Campus Connection, one thing we're going to try to do, would you roll this way? I'm going to be sweating by the time I do it. Put your privilege in front. How many of you get on the Max or go through tight spaces in the airport with your backpack this way? It's to keep from whacking people. It's kind, it's nice, it's respectful. I love it when people do this, okay? It also makes me put my arms around my privilege. I can see it better. So in Campus Connection, we're just going to try to keep our privilege right here so that when we're saying things and doing things and mentoring, we're paying attention to our own privilege and what that might mean, which we'll be talking about through the whole Campus Connection experience. And I want to pay attention to people around me. What is their privilege? Where are they accepted and less accepted, both for each other as well as our youth? We want to pay attention. Now, one reason why it's hard to pay attention, if these 8 chairs are the big 8, where would you think I would be sitting? I'll give you a hint. Here. I'd probably be sitting here. Now these things they have intersectionality, right? Like you could have an elderly man be treated with more respect than an elderly woman, right? Or you could have, so these things intersect with each other. But in general, I would sit here. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of a risk and ask, would some people in the audience be willing to sit where you would be sitting if you're just kind of looking at the big 8? There's no pressure because I can totally do this on my own. And I don't mind running back and forth to the chairs. Okay? But if you want to, and it's not a perfect system, who in here would identify pretty close to me? Okay, so if you were going to, so I only need one of you because I'm going to get up and host the game. Okay? So, but if you were going to sit with me, you would sit here. And if we had room, we would have everybody sitting that's kind of like me here. So I'm just going to count to 5 and try to fill the seats. And if we don't, it doesn't matter. 1. Thank you. I'm making eye contact. 2. And just pay attention to where people are going. Oh, good, you have mine. I forgot where it was. 1, 2, 3, 4. What did I say I would count to? 5. Okay. Yeah, because you know what? That guy's not a shit, okay? That guy's just white. It's a big shit, okay? That guy's not a shit. I don't think you knocked anybody over to sit there. You're just a white guy. Good Lord. Okay, so... You don't have to be afraid to sit there. You didn't do anything mean. You just showed up with your backpack. Could you? Oh, that's my notes. I can't crumble that up. Okay. You're probably like, she seems a little disorganized. Well, first of all, that's just kind of how I roll. But second of all, I just drove down from Estes Park right before this because I was at a CSU leadership meeting. So there's my excuse. Okay. So, can you all do me a favor and face the audience, but don't turn your chair, just turn in your chair. Oh, good direction followers, okay. Okay, what we tend to think is that this is the human race. I'm gonna throw you my imaginary ribbon over there. Can you catch it? Human race. Ready, set, go. That would be so cool. That'd be so cool. It's just not true. And sometimes we want to believe that this is the human race and that we all have equal opportunity. When we say ready, set, go, everybody's going. And when we believe that, we become colorblind, gender blind, sexual orientation blind. It's okay to want this. It's okay to dream about this. But as we're working for this, we also have to be seated in the realities of what's going on, okay? So now, could y'all turn again and face this way? This is the reality. Could you take my ribbon? Thank you. Ready, set, go. This is the human race. Some people just get a head start. And the more of these you identify on that side, okay, does that mean that you're going to succeed? I met people like you. I'm so sorry. I know you're going to succeed. God, I feel bad now. Okay. Okay. All it means is, let's play basketball. Could you make a shot? Okay. He could have missed. Okay? He could have missed. Can you take a shot? Okay. It's a little harder from back there because you can't see because somebody's in front of you, but just everybody stay sit. Okay? Nope, no leaning over yet. Because we're doing what's true. Nice. Okay, made it. Could somebody else be the basket? Basket, okay. Okay, you give it a try.
I can't even see your arms.
Okay, can't see your arms. It's hard to know where you're going. Okay. Okay, it gets tougher. Doesn't mean somebody back here isn't going to be like whoosh, okay? They could be like whoosh in the back. It's just harder. Okay. That was an accident, okay? Okay, so it's just harder, and from back here it's even harder, okay? Now, this sucks, right? This is the world we live in, and it's not fair, and it's not right, and it actually hurts everyone. Research would show us that it doesn't just hurt people back here, it hurts everyone, and there's so much science to say that when we diversify who's at the table, who's at the playground, who's at all these institutions, we all win, everyone. Everyone's life, economics, and other things improve. Okay, so you can't get rid of your privilege, just like you can't take off that backpack. But what can you do is could you all just lean over and look back? I almost whacked my head on that. That would have been really embarrassing. Okay, just look back. You can look back. The reason why... Okay. You can look back. The problem with privilege is, see, if I'm back here, I can see everybody's backpack. I can see everyone's privilege. That's my lived experience. My lived experience is that when I go in a room, I'm looking. I'm trying to see, what's this going to be like? So I don't have a choice but to see your backpacks and try to navigate my world a little bit, okay? So it's not that you don't want to see from up here, it's just harder because it's behind you. I have to work so hard, and I make mistakes every single day, to try and turn around. I want to see you, but dang, I gotta make efforts. Because if I just hope I'm gonna see you, I gotta turn around. Okay, so we want to see each other. Where'd that basketball go? Don't throw it. I know I'm going to catch that thing. Okay. Okay, so this time, we're going to have you try. I need a basketball rim. You can tell I'm a really big sport. I don't know why I use sports metaphors. Okay, because I know nothing. Okay, this time, could everybody that is in front of you lean down, you stand up, and could everybody cheer her on? This is so much pressure. I know, I'm so sorry. Whoa! I thought that she could move around. She's like, I got you. That's awesome. So that's the kind of things we can do. We can look back. We can see you. We can pay attention to you. We can think about how this this might be for you. And we can cheer you on. We can lean over. Okay. It's kind of hard to talk about this in a big group, especially really fast. But could I just have a few comments from the chair people or the people watching the chair people? Just a few comments. Anything is welcome. And will be dealt with appropriately. No, just anything's welcome. Yes.
I just wanted to mention that I know it's really hard to sometimes be aware of these things without it. Like, I have a friend who identifies as non-binary, and they have recently started using they, them pronouns, and for some of us, like me, who are more in the queer community, it was a pretty easy switch. But I do have a friend who grew up conservative and Christian and never around that, and he's still struggling with it every day, but he's trying so hard, and that's what's really important, is the effort. And it can be really difficult to reprogram your brain to think about it, and it's just keep trying even when it's hard. And like, we all everyone appreciates the effort, and just try.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate that, because you don't have to try to say she when you look at me. Right? Your brain doesn't have to work at that. But if you have said to me, I prefer a different pronoun, what pronoun were you giving an example of?
My friend uses they, them pronouns.
They, them pronouns? Man, I gotta work at that. I gotta seriously pay attention. I gotta pay attention. I gotta wear that backpack right forward. And then even when I mess up, I can just say, ugh, and then do it. And you know what? I'll probably mess up 1,000 times, but if I just catch myself 1,000 times and say, I wanna keep trying. I want to keep working on it. It's not my value. It's not how much I care about you. It's my brain. So we have to pay attention to that hijacked brain and get in front of it. So thank you. Anybody else? You can do it? You can do it. You can do it. I believe in you.
I just want to highlight the importance of the passing one on there, because I know I don't look like I belong in this chair, but the more you learn about me, the more you may realize I actually do belong in this chair. So just knowing that just because by looking at someone you don't know everything about them and their identities, the passing is super important.
And let me add to that when you pass, people, what's kind of a privilege, right, is that people think you're here. So you might get more, my guess is you would have more unearned privilege, you just showed up, because people think this is true. So if you go into banks, you probably get a better interest rate, you probably get called on more if you look like that in school, all kinds of things. You might lose some privilege as you let people know who you are. But passing, there's an assumption where you're sitting. So passing can be an interesting dynamic for people. Sometimes somebody will say, I'm Latinx and I don't look that way. And so that makes me mad. And people need to know that about me. Or, I don't look gay, but I am. That's passing. And passing has both negative and positive things to it. But what we want to do here is get to know each other. Excellent. Any other? I'll count to 5 again. Any other comments? 1? 2? No pressure, just asking. 3? Yep. Can you just shout? Because that's a really long way for me to go over there.
We talked about it a little bit before, but one thing I think that's important is sometimes it's hard not to feel guilty when you do have that initial thought in your mind. And that happened to me a lot because I also was kind of sheltered, I think, and didn't know a lot about some of the things. And I think that rather than feeling that guilt, acknowledging it, that I was incorrect and I didn't understand this, and then changing it, you don't have to feel guilty about if you accidentally did know before. But the most important thing is that you're acknowledging that misconception and then changing it in your mind.
I love that. That is exactly what we want to do in Campus Connection. We want to be a safe place to make mistakes. We want to be a safe place to be yourself. And so you don't want to call somebody out. I can't believe you used the wrong pronoun. I mean, just in general, not just you. Grr, right, grr. But I want to call you in. And I want to say, oh, I can see why maybe you said that. So my pronouns are, and then, even though this person gets really tired of that, we're going to try to do that in Campus Connection, but what we want you to say then is not, now your brain might be like, oh my God, really? You want me to say they and them? If your brain does that, just dismiss that. Just dismiss that part of your brain and say, thank you for telling me. I'm going to really work on that. Because we will have some youth that are coming, and you will have some people in this audience who will say to you, they'll just correct you. And when somebody corrects you, please keep in mind the difference between intention and impact. Because if you said to me, well, that wasn't my intent, or that hurt my feelings, and if you say that wasn't my intention, well, I hope it wasn't your intention, or you would be an asshole, right? And we try not to let any assholes into this program. That's why we made you apply. But it had an impact. Shoot, I do stuff all the time that has an impact on somebody. It wasn't my intention. I just didn't see it. I just didn't see it because I got so much privilege. I didn't see it because I don't sit in that chair. I sit in that chair. And so when you tell me, I need to not go, oh, so sensitive. Can't say anything anymore. I want to say, thank you. That helps me know you and respect you, and I just grew as a person. And that is good for me. That is good for all of us. So yes, this is a safe place. I call them clear-ups. Can I just clear something up with you? I just call them clear-ups. I just had to have a clear-up done to me on a meeting I was just at where I made a mistake, and it was so awesome how the person said to me, I was like, yes, thank you. And then I had to say it to another person. And I had to say, you know what? You just rolled your eyes when I talked about implicit bias, and I'll bet that was just your brain. I'll bet you didn't actually mean to do that. I'll bet you that actually you want to talk to me about it. Well, then they were stuck talking to me about it, right? So I just let them off the hook. Anything else? I'm going to go again. Going once. Twice. You got a hand over here.
Oh, I didn't want.
I won't give it to you.
Can I just try something like?
You can try anything you want.
Can we all like just get in a circle with the chairs?
Okay, he's going to be running for our next elected official.
Well, yeah.
Pretend the other two chairs are there.
Yeah. So what I was going to say, even though everyone has privilege in their own way, at the end of the day, everyone's human. So that alone is just a privilege that we all share. That's the same. So no matter where you come from and what you look like, what you believe in, just remember, we're all still just human. So just gotta respect each other and just respect that fact.
I want to thank you. And stay in your circle for me. Okay, so the thing that I want to say is that we all have privilege, right? So if I go around really quick and get real fast, what's just a privilege in your life that's got nothing to do with social identities? Just a privilege. Maybe you're close to your mom. Maybe you have great